Now stop beating your gums and sound the attack.
All right, hello, and welcome everyone to another episode of the We Got the Chocolates podcast. This will be episode 38, and it is another sporting interview, which is very exciting. And I've also got Haz and Mitch with me. How are you, boys?
Good, Leigh. Good to be back.
Yep, also good, Lethal. Thanks for asking.
Great to hear. Now, you will notice there's a song coming in the background here, guys. This is what we're leading in with today. What are your thoughts here, guys?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's very up and about.
Very different to the last one we played.
Yeah, it's a bit faster though. I could get around it.
Very jazzy.
This is obviously Beach Wood. I'm sure you're aware, but I'll just tell it for all the listeners out there. This is no, it's not. It's Beach Disco. I apologise. Written by Dougie Wood, or potentially Doogie Wood. Teach me how to Dougie Wood.
Okay.
Very strong. Now, this particular episode, guys, very exciting one. Sam, we mention it quite frequently throughout the episode, actually, that we're unsure of how you've managed to do this. But we have indeed got an Australian tennis player, number 43 in the world, which you'll hear about. John Millman is with us for this particular episode.
He sure is. And thanks to a good mate of mine, Ian Malpass, for helping us get in contact. Ian's a tennis coach out at Wynnum, so that was good. Good from him.
Outstanding. I was actually coached by Ian Malpass back in the day.
Really?
Yeah, it's probably not one that he wants to take credit for, unfortunately, that particular career. But yes, I think he punted me very early on.
Right, fair enough.
Now, guys, basically, we're just going to get straight into it. There's not much point buffering for too long. It's actually quite a long chat. John was very, very kind with his time, gave us a lot. He seemed to, obviously, being in isolation probably helped, but he didn't have a lot to do. So he was happy to give us a long chat, which means that we are going to release it in two parts, correct, guys? Yep. There will be a part A and a part B, but you won't have to wait for very long in between. We'll try and release the next one tomorrow.
Yeah, well worth the listen there, and I reckon the second part's even better than the first part. So
correct, yes. It does come good. We all come good in the second part.
A lot of stitch-ups there. But before we get into the interview, we should thank our sponsor, Alchemy Cordials Australia. Without them, this podcast would not be able to run as well as it does, despite Leigh doing quite a good job himself.
But always Has. You can count on Has to get the sponsors in. Very well done.
But Alchemy is a good local company. You've been in the Redlands and where we are, and have been transforming refreshment for the past 23 years. So if you're an individual or a company, check out their website.
Love that. Transforming refreshment.
Individual or company? What other options are there? Who else?
Well, if you're one of those two, then check them out. Like
if you're a group of two, don't check them out.
If you're an individual or a company of two.
Just say that you don't have to be one or the other. You can be either.
Right, yeah. All right, nicely done and well worked out, guys. Okay, without further ado, here is John Millman. All right, everyone. Welcome. And Sam, you've actually you found us another sport we've branched out to, and it's the first for the podcast again. We have never interviewed a tennis player, and I'm not even sure how you've actually managed to make this happen, but I'm very, very impressed with you. I say a lot of negative things about you usually, Sam, but you've come through on this occasion. But we are fortunate enough to have currently ranked world number 43 tennis player after reaching his highest ranking of 33 in 2018. 8 wins and 4 losses this year in ATP events, which was probably a great start really to 2020 against the world's best before things sort of took a turn for the worse, I guess, in terms of COVID-19, which we have spoken about on the podcast before. Certainly has represented Australia in the Davis Cup, which is always great viewing. He's competed for Australia in the 2016 Rio Olympics and became the first tennis player to achieve an Olympic double bagel, which is only a term I've become familiar with today. But we are most certainly talking about John Millman. John, have we got you there?
Yeah, we're here, boys. Thanks for having me.
Outstanding. You are most welcome, mate. Now, obviously, this is Leigh. This is my voice. My brother is Mitch, and his voice sounds very similar. He's about to speak at the moment.
Yep. Hey, John, how's it going?
Yeah, good, mate.
It can be difficult to tell us apart, but that's fine as long as one person's talking at once. Yep. And then Sam, you're obviously familiar with. So, Sam, you can take it away as well.
Yeah. Hi, John. Good to speak to you.
No, thanks, boys. And anytime you do an intro like that, I'm more than happy to have a chat, mate. My tyres felt well pumped up then.
yeah, absolutely. And speaking of actually tyres being pumped up, John, you've had an eventful day today, as we understand. I actually had my car broken into yesterday, which was quite interesting. So I've spent the whole morning getting abused on Facebook for not punching the guy that I caught in my car. But then you have actually gone and got yourself a new car today as well, haven't you?
Yeah, look, it's not a new car. I wouldn't call it a new car, but look, I'm fortunate enough that my brother-in-law's family have come through. They have a scrap metal yard up at Toowoomba, so I made the trip to Toowoomba today, up the Great Dividing Range there, down Lockyer way. It was not the worst trip in the world. Good to actually get out the house and pick myself up a car.
Absolutely. And you were telling us before, John, I guess because of your travel, we'll probably get to some of these questions, but because of your travel, am I correct in saying you've never actually had a car or never owned one of your own?
Never owned a car. Look, at tennis, a few people laugh at me for that, and rightly so. But as tennis players, we travel probably 44 weeks a year or so, 44, 45 weeks a year, pending good health, which hasn't always been the case for me. And I come from a big family, a generous family, and there's normally a car or two lying around at mum or dad's that makes itself available. But with everyone grounded here and me being back for an extended unknown period of time, I thought I'd get my act together and once again call on another favour. And I still probably don't own a car, but at least I've got one that I can drive around for the foreseeable future. Toyota Hilux, apparently they're bulletproof, and they'll need to be with my driving and the virus that's running amok right now.
Absolutely. Well, they're not entirely bulletproof because our housemate actually has one and someone just reversed straight back into his. And that definitely hasn't coped that well with that. But if you can avoid that, then I think you'll go very well.
Yeah, look, I trust the neighbours. They no problem so far. And I've seen their cars and they're not the biggest. And so I reckon I've got the biggest one now. So, if there's any collisions, I reckon the Hilux is going to come out on top.
Absolutely. That's a battle you win.
And John, we've spoken a little bit about, we mentioned Hazard somehow. I'm not sure how he's managed to get you onto the podcast for us, but it turns out Leigh and I actually have some sort of distant link to you. Our sister was speaking to us this morning and reckons she works with your dad at Ormiston State School. Does that sound right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, look, my old man, he's semi-retired now. He's been a teacher for, the better part of I'm trying to do the math of how old the big fella is. But look, he's been a teacher for 40 odd years, I reckon. So okay. He does a little bit of relief teaching, and I think that the folk down at Ormiston are pretty good to him, and he doesn't mind the students down there. So he makes the trip down there, and when he gets called upon, I reckon the teachers have a few sick days though, because he seems to get called upon a little bit.
Well, John, you're actually talking to one at the moment, and myself as a teacher, I can inform you that definitely, if I worked for 40 years, I would hate to think how many sick days I would have taken.
Yeah, nothing stops the old man though. He's one of these baby boomers. He's got terrible asthma, but he doesn't think that. He reckons he keeps telling me he's robust and nothing's gonna knock him down or whatever. I think he's a bit of an idiot, but no, he's a good man and he's still works. He still I think just being at home with mum would drive him crazy. So I think he still secretly likes it. He says he still wants the money, but I reckon he just wants to get out of the house.
Out of the house as well, yeah. Very fair. John, getting back to your tennis, I guess, we actually mentioned in that intro, and this was a phrase I'd never heard of before, but we mentioned your double bagel accomplishment at the Olympics, which is obviously, we've just heard that the next Olympics has been postponed. But can you explain, because I feel like most people would be like us and have no idea what a double bagel actually is. Like, we've played some tennis, not at a great level, but I've never heard that reference at all.
Yeah, look, a double bagel, also known as if you donutted someone, that's another one. Obviously, a donut, that's another one that we dish out a little bit. But that's where a double bagel obviously is 6-love, 6-love. So the opponent doesn't get a game. doesn't happen all that often in tennis, especially at the top end of tennis. And you have to probably have a very good day, and your opponent has to have a bit of an off day, which was the case in Rio. So look, I never knew that there was any type of record until I think one of the journalists post match made reference to it. But look, it's just one of those little comical things that I haven't made too much reference to it since. But it's a bit of fun and a bit of an achievement, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's a great education for us, because that'll probably be terms that I'll have to use when I've played you in tennis.
I was going to say, my end of tennis, that happens on a very regular basis. I think I would get double bagelled every time I play you, Leigh.
Correct. That's right. But in that particular scenario, obviously the Olympics, John, is knockout. Correct.
Yeah, look, it's the games for me. One of the greatest experiences of my life. The night before, we were at the opening ceremony. So we got asked whether we were going to do the opening ceremony or not, and I didn't. There was no way I was going to miss that at the Maracana, and the schedule was that I was on first up the next day.
Yeah.
So, it was one of those ones. I did the opening ceremony. I made the most of that, and I was on the first bus out of there to prepare for my first round match against a guy called Ricardas Berankis, who's actually a really good player from Lithuania. He's been in the top 100 for a long time, in and out of the top 100 for a long time, and it was just one of those days. It was one of those days where I played pretty well. I was very solid, put up a pretty good mental and physical performance, and he was definitely off.
Yeah.
So, look, it's a nice thing. I was probably more proud of the fact that I was at an Olympic Games. It was one of the best experiences that I've had in my sport. It was actually a weird vibe going into that Olympics, because there was a little bit of controversy before about the men's tennis team in particular. Nick and Kitty Chiller had some words backwards and forwards in the media, and the tennis players kind of didn't really know if they really wanted us there, to be honest. But it was a lot of fun, and honestly one of the best experiences I've ever had competing at Rio.
It's unbelievable. Unfortunately, your opponent probably wouldn't have been able to say the same thing. Do you think if you've gone to the Olympics, been knocked out in the first round, 6-love, does that still count as going to the Olympics?
Oh, look.
It's controversial.
I think I think if you ask him, it probably does. Since then I've beaten him and I've also lost to him. So it was just a bad day in the office. But look, he was actually a pretty good player. It surprised me that I managed to get the job done pretty quickly. There's always a little bit of different pressure, so you just don't know how you're going to handle it or what to expect when you're playing in Olympic Games. For me, that was uncharted territory, and I've played plenty of matches before, represented my country before. That's all well and good, but there's something special about those Olympic Games, and look, it was cool to kind of start off my campaign. Unfortunately, I then went out there and lost to Nishikori, who ended up getting a bronze medal. Yeah. So that win didn't count for too much, but still to be a part of the Olympic Games experience was one that I was always going to remember, and one that really pushed me along actually to want to qualify for the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, that was a real goal of mine. Knowing that if I was fit and healthy and had my ranking in a good enough position, it was something that kind of spurred me on these last 4 years with that in the back of your mind. These last 12 months have been about positioning my ranking almost like a horse race. You want to try to time your run and time your schedule to peak for, say, the Melbourne Cup or something. That was something that was in the back of my mind. That's how big a stead I have held the Olympics in my head since Rio, and obviously disappointing for plenty of athletes. that it got postponed, but probably the right decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, we were going to ask you about that actually. Obviously, sort of a lot of events have been postponed or cancelled with the COVID-19 situation. I was going to ask if sort of how that's affected you and what other competitions you're expecting to miss out on this year, or how long you're expecting it to last.
Oh, mate, I think we're in a lot of strife. I really think we're in a lot of trouble for a few reasons. Tennis is, I think when you look at it, there's just the one tour, the ATP tour, and it's almost like a travelling circus. You know, we go through the seasons and we're in different almost continents at certain parts of the season, and players from all over the world. There's over probably it's 200 and something federations, tennis federations from each of the countries. So there are a lot of people that are playing tennis, and we're spread out through all corners of the globe. So for tennis to continue and for tennis to start up again, I don't see how it would until we've overcome Corona, whether that's with a vaccine or whether the virus kind of runs its course and fades away. I just don't understand how it can possibly go on until we're kind of unified. Because even if Australia, let's say Australia is fortunate and we, overcome it a little sooner than other places, it would be unfair for just the countries that have overcome it to be able to play a tournament, and let's say someone in South America can't get there because they're still battling with the illness. It's something that's a real problem for tennis, and it's something that I think is going to hold us out for a long time. Obviously, Wimbledon was cancelled. That was only happened a couple of days ago, and we got the email saying that the schedule's not going ahead until July 7 at the earliest. Well, the next swing is through the United States, and the United States looks like it's almost the epicenter of the virus right now.
One of the hardest hit areas, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, Flushing Meadows, where we play the tennis, that's turned into a kind of a makeshift army hospital right now.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the Senate court of the US Open. So to envisage that we're going to make that hard court swing would be, I think super doubtful, and even the most optimistic of minds, I think, would have their doubts cast over that. And then after that, it's the Asian swing. Well, I mean, you head through China and you head through these places where it all kicked off. So I think I'm going to be on the sidelines for a while, hence why I organised the High Lux, and hence why I'm trying to organise a few ways to kind of stay fit and kind of stay motivated, because that's the tough thing right now.
Agreed. And John, you've touched on the sort of rankings a little bit, and I'm not going to lie, gave you a Twitter profile a little bit of a stalk leading up to this, and saw you commenting on what they're going to do with the rankings in this time of sort of no tennis happening around the world. I was wondering if you'd heard any more there, or if you could explain how that sort of works to us, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Look, the tennis ranking, it's a rolling 12-month ranking system. So what I mean by that, to be honest with you, I've lost track of what the date is today, but let's say it's April 7. Okay, we're at the 4th. Okay, I was 3 days off. But let's say it is the 4th of April. So let's say I got a point on the 4th of April in 2019. So how the normal tour would work is in 2020 on the 4th of April, I would lose that ranking point.
Okay.
So it's a 12-month rolling ranking system. It's one of the tough things with tennis is that you have to continually be fit and healthy and playing good tennis to keep on banking these points, because they're going to come off in 12 months' time. So you always have to be staying, in the game. So any type of injury, that's a real career killer, because you're going to miss out an extended period of time. That's going to apply pressure a little bit later on when you're defending these points, and you're in a bit of strife then. So it's a pretty brutal ranking system, but what makes it even more difficult in these unprecedented times now, in the modern era of tennis, we haven't ever had a suspension of the tour. The last suspension of the tour was the last time we didn't have Wimbledon was back in World War II.
Yeah, we read that.
So, yeah, and so what happens then? when all these tournaments are being thrown off the schedule and when there's no tennis, well, guys this time last year who made points, their points are being kind of hacked away. So what the ATP did initially is, okay, we're going to freeze the ranking. So no one's going to drop off points. But that's a really big short-term solution right now, because when points come, let's say we're playing again in August. Let's say hopefully, we find a cure for the coronavirus, everything settles down and we're playing by August. Well, all these guys that didn't get to defend points now and had points coming off at the end of the year, well, they're in a bit of strife all of a sudden, because the notion is you have 12 months to defend the points that you get. So there's no real solutions. I know that what happens now is the ATP board is putting together, they're in consultations right now, and they're putting together a bit of a plan and maybe 5 or 6 different solutions that they're going to then present to the Players' Council, and the Players' Council, acting on behalf of us players, will then come up with a decision that they think's most fair. But I find it's going to be really interesting. There's going to be a few people that might benefit, and there'll be a few people that really don't benefit from the decision. It's something that is super serious when it comes to our careers. But I think the best way to look at it right now is to kind of take a back seat and really just kind of take that idea that there's no point in worrying about it until it happens. So your guess is as good as mine as to what will eventuate. Yeah, but there's some tough decisions to be made.
Yeah, well, hopefully things turn out in your favour there. It's not going to favour everyone, I guess.
We need you to benefit from that. Really,
but I mean,
mate, I want to benefit. Trust me. I'm sitting here going, please let me benefit.
Interestingly, you were actually the last person to play against a Brazilian tennis player who was the first professional tennis player to test positive to the virus. Now, I don't believe you've contracted it, so that's good news. Yeah. But you've actually had bigger issues since coming back to Australia, I hear, and have been asking your Twitter followers about a big issue you've had at home. Do you know what I'm talking about, and did you get any answers from them there?
I do know what you're talking about, and you're right. I played Davis Cup was actually my last match in Australia. Well, actually on the tour, and we won. We qualified for the final series in Madrid, which was awesome, and it's such a thrill to go into camp. Like you, Sammy, I know that you're in a team sport, and for us as tennis players, we're individuals here. So nearly every other week, we're playing tennis for ourselves. We're our own bosses. It's us that's the other person at the end of the court, and that's how we try to kind of make a livelihood. But every now and again, say at the Olympics or even more so at the Davis Cup, you get to join the boys and go into camp the week before, and then play your heart out for the country, and it's a really kind of special time. So the fact that Davis Cup was my last lot of matches that I played is something that, and the fact that we won is actually, it's actually an all right feeling to go in this extended break with, to know in the back of my head that, I did my part and helped the boys qualify for the finals in Madrid. But Sibu Vilch, who's a young Brazilian and super talented, we're going to see a lot of him. He contracted the virus. Now, it looks like he contracted it after the Davis Cup, but, it looks like I didn't contract that. But here, the biggest problem is there's no courts to hit on. All the courts are being closed down. The National Academy where I train in Tennyson is shut down. Yeah. And look, I'm trying to go private. So I think I kind of put the question if anyone can have a bit of a hit with me, or if there's a wall there or anything. Is that what we're referring to, or is it something else?
Actually, I thought it was a bigger issue than that. Even you were struggling how to spread hard butter onto toast, but we'll take the tennis court one as well.
One. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the hard butter. Well, do you know what do you boys do?
Well, actually, Mitch probably has an answer that's slightly interesting.
Well, I was just going to say that I've been using margarine for the last couple of years and haven't had any issues, so maybe worth a crack.
That is John.
You can't be a margarine guy, though.
That is due to the fact that he is a vegan. Though.
Yeah, a little bit biased there, if I'm honest.
So he's not one for hard butter.
That makes sense then.
Yeah, but
the vegan. My sister's a vegetarian. One or two of them are vegans. I've got 4 sisters, and The thing that gets me just a tiny bit, and maybe you can explain this to me.
This will be fantastic.
I'm
waiting for this opportunity.
I'm curious. I'm really curious because they always give me some food and they'll present it up and they'll jazz it up like it's, let's say, spaghetti bolognese or whatever. So, that's an Australian staple, I reckon. So we get spag bowl, and they always tell me, now you wait, this just tastes like real spaghetti bolognese. And I'm yet to find a vegan food, and I have no problem with the vegan lifestyle and limiting dairy meat and whatnot, but I'm yet to find something that actually tastes like what they're pretending that it is.
Yeah. No, I haven't got to come back there. I agree completely.
Are you with me on that?
I'm with you there.
There is. Maybe it's just my sisters and they can't cook, mate. It could be that.
No. Well, yeah, I've been trying to obviously do a lot of the cooking around here because Lethal's quite lazy. So I've made him plenty of meals over the years, trying to convince him of my ways. But yeah,
I've sort of gone flexitarian, John. Whatever food's on offer, I'm just happy to eat it.
Yeah, but no, I've always got the same feedback that I can't quite replicate what I'm aiming for. So yeah, no, it's a very fair point.
It's dire straits for me here right now, mate. I'm not used to it because, as a player, as a tennis player on the tour, where, like I said, like I touched on, we're traveling 45 weeks a year, and that, most of the times you're staying in hotel rooms, especially now, you get to stay in hotels, and that's decent because right now, I'm not going to lie, I'm on the top echelon of the ATP tour, and life's a little bit easier in terms of, your accommodations. That's not always the case. The tennis tour is absolutely brutal, in my opinion, probably one of the most brutal things there is out there in terms of professional sport, which would surprise a lot of people because you see the glitz and glamour. But hotel rooms, 45 weeks a year, you kind of get used to just eating out every time. So little problems like being able to spread butter. It's something I haven't had to face for a while. And I found it gets pretty hard in the fridge. And some people have suggested, have a little tin that you leave your butter in, out. And that doesn't sit well with me either, to leave it out on the
not sure about room temperature butter.
Yeah, no, I haven't got time for that.
Especially here in Brisbane, as you know, it's the conditions here I don't think are conducive to leaving dairy products outside.
No, I would certainly not have thought so.
You'd be pouring it on your toast.
That's right. That's very, very interesting, I would suggest. But that's a real story of trials and tribulations, and just a great inspiration for a lot of people out there, John, that you've been able to work your way through that.
Yeah, no, look, I still haven't. I'm still looking for solutions. So, my brother-in-law goes with the no butter, and I'm that frustrated that I keep kind of chopping up my bit of toast that I might be going down that route, just giving up butter altogether.
Okay, right.
All right, John, I just wanted to say, I feel like you've missed an opportunity here having this chat over the phone and not in person, because you can't show off your shiny white teeth that you got at the moment.
Yeah, look, I know what you're referring to here.
Are you informed by someone here, Has?
Oh, actually, no, I just saw this on his Instagram. He loves to plug his shiny teeth whitening company on Instagram.
No, it's German, mate. No, German. And we know only the good stuff comes out of Germany.
That's right.
No, look how that Flash teeth whitening. I haven't actually. I was meant to be in Germany and get a bit of a session there, and I was hoping I was going to have some shiny whites like Jurgen Klopp, but haven't been able to do that yet, obviously, because I can't travel. But that came about. I play a bit of club tennis in Germany, and I used to, at least. So when you start off playing tennis, you got to try to think up of ways how to keep the dream alive and travel. And for me, I'd have a little bit of money at the start of the year. I'd travel to Europe and go there for about 5 months and get pretty poor. And in the middle of that, it would be terrible for your world ranking, but they have a bit of club tennis over there in Germany and in Switzerland. So it's like club footy. you get paid a little bit of money each weekend to play for the club. And while you're doing that, you can't play any tournaments that are going to help your world ranking, but you get a little bit of money, and that kind of helps you at least get home and maybe see out a little bit of the end of the year. So it's just one of those ways how to keep your dream afloat while you're still trying to kind of chip away at and learn your game and try to become a professional tennis player. So I made some good connections there, and I was actually playing a few matches after Wimbledon for Bundesliga 1, and that's when you start playing the really serious guys. You know, I was playing guys like Dominic Thiem and whatnot. But one of the main sponsors of the club was, Flash, who were a teeth whitening company there, and they decided to join the journey with me on my individual professional career. They're actually a great team, good people, and look, if it makes my teeth a little shinier, then I mean, there's a bit of an upside too. My girlfriend even likes it.
I was going to say, John, did you see that as like a compliment or more of sort of a diss? Like, hey mate, your teeth stink. You need us.
Oh mate, look, I'll take anything, mate. I'm no oil painting, and I totally understand that. So, mate, tennis is all about the 1%ers. You know, we hear that a lot. We hear that a lot in sport, don't we?
It is a buzz phrase in sport.
Let's go out there. Let's get those 1%ers. You know, it makes a difference. And, mate, even off the court, I'm looking for 1%ers. And if some whiter teeth give me those 1%ers, then I'm all about that life.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Perfect. I love how you've been so nice and smooth with your promotion there as well. Has likes a bit more of a shameless plug.
Haz is very forceful. Like, you could be talking about just a random subject, and then Haz will just be like, "Oh, this reminds me of No Talk Surfboards." Just force it into the conversation somehow.
Yeah, he does like.
Mate, the problem is in Australia is we're interested in tennis for about 1 month a year, and that's the month of January, and that's the real problem with it in Australia, because we have our nation's divided by other sports, and I think because the tour then kind of moves overseas for the next 11 months or whatever, it's not in our faces. So Australians aren't really interested in tennis, and therefore. No Australian companies want to get behind me, so I have to kind of do it myself.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right, no, very fair.
Yeah.
I guess we're a little bit more fortunate that cricket tends to go for a good chunk of the year over here, so we managed to pick up a sponsor, and you obviously can't see us at the moment, but for anyone watching at home, we'll notice a few strategically placed bottle of Alchemy cordials, which has managed to bring on board for us. So
that's right. And not even just cordials; they've actually got the full array, the full gamut of sort of coffees and syrups and all sorts, which have been pretty impressive.
Yeah, so we're sitting here sipping a little chai latte as we speak to you, mate. It's been delicious.
Hasn't it?
And you mentioned how your travelling isn't all fun and games, but that you only see the glitz and glamour. And apparently I heard you ate something in Egypt that your stomach didn't agree with while you were over there.
Yeah, mate. Mate. The trials and tribulations of a tennis player trying to make it is pretty intense, actually, and I'll tell you the Egypt story, and then I can maybe go into a little more detail of just how rough it is to play a little bit of tennis.
John, can I just say, I didn't even know there was tennis in Egypt. Like, I didn't even know there was a tour there or like a tournament.
Yeah,
there.
There's players that come from Egypt. They haven't got anyone right now inside the top 100, but yeah, look, it is a global game, and it's played everywhere, but. Look, I was in Egypt. It was one of the trips I'd made after I did my shoulder. So I had a shoulder operation, and I thought I'd try to get back into it and play. So I think I was 19 at the time. My old man actually had taken a little bit of long service leave, and normally I did all my trips by myself. But my old man took me over. We kind of travelled together. We got sick of each other after a while, and we decided that on the way home we would pop in to Egypt. We're in Morocco. We thought, look, let's go and see the pyramids. So we go and see the pyramids, get ripped off by a few people there. We end up, all we want to do is go, I don't know if you've been to Egypt, but all you want to do is go see the pyramids. You end up at the papyrus factory, where they're selling their, drawings on paper. You go to the perfume factory. I still want to just go to Egypt. There's the pyramids, Giza. You go to the perfume factory, and they have all the most genuine perfumes there. My old man gets sucked in, and he says, "Oh, my wife, she likes Pleasures or whatever by Estee Lauder." And funny you should say that, dear Tips. And the guy says, funny you should say that. We've got the pure essence of pleasures. This stuff's unbelievable. So Ron, he's buying that. Gives mum a rash. But, that's another story. So what I'm trying to get at is I finally see the pyramids and I'm exhausted. I am absolutely cooked, and day's done. We're trying to eat local. We're at the hotel, as safe as it can get. We thought. I had a 4 cheeses pizza and a mushroom soup, and I'm telling you, I was it was fine. Went down a treat. I catch the elevator up the stairs, and as soon as those elevator doors closed, an explosion went off in my guts. Like I thought, oh my goodness, I'm actually going to poo myself here. And so in preparation, I told Ron, "Hey Ronnie, mate, that's my old man. I said, Ronnie, I need the key to the room, because this is touch and go. It happened that quick." And older people, they take a fair bit of time to get things done. And Ron kept, I reckon, that whole trip, he kept every single room card from every hotel or accommodation place that we stayed at. So he's going through that. The elevator lights are ticking as we're ascending, and he's going through every card. Finally gets it, and I take it, and then the doors open. I kind of like hobble with clenched cheeks down the hallway, trying to hold it in, and as I'm opening up the door of the hotel, like every hotel, the bathroom's on the left or right. I was on the left in this one. The pants are coming down, and I just I make a mess of the toilet, and just pure relief when I finish. But I kind of I look up, and Big Ron's still at the doorway, and all I hear is him saying that, "Oh, that's disgusting," he said, and I look up, and I don't know the listeners if they're going to appreciate this, but the only way I could probably describe it is there was a Hansel and Gretel trail of shit to from the doorway of the hotel room, around the corner, into the bathroom, and up on the toilet seat. So I spent the next 24 hours in agony. I don't think I've ever been more sick in my life. I thought that, it was one of those times you kind of would welcome death or something. You'd welcome something because it was terrible. And spent the next 24 hours flying home. So it was a shocking experience. The pyramids were decent. The perfume gave rashes, and haven't been back to Egypt since.
I tell you what, the Hansel and Gretel nursery rhyme would have been a lot different if that was the plot.
Thanks for not sparing us any details there.
That's right. That was very vivid, actually. Suddenly, I have no desire to go to Egypt.
No, it's
now that wasn't on Twitter. I never put that on Twitter, so I don't know where you got that one.
No, because you didn't have enough characters to be able to write that story.
It would have been a thread.
Yeah,
those annoying threads that take forever to read.
Right, that's right, exactly.
We've actually been told that also back in your school days you were quite on the ball and even like to set your own rules a little bit. Apparently you refused Tennis Australia's orders to go to a junior tournament in Fiji because you didn't want to miss a school match for Churchy.
Probably was right. Look, I had school tennis right at the top of my list, and I started off at Brisbane Grammar. It didn't work out for me there, and ended up at Churchy. And I was really lucky that when I went to Churchy, who were back then were definitely probably a little more flexible with their sport. The tennis season was just about to kick off, and Ian Malpass, who's been an institution of Churchy tennis for a long time, welcomed me into the team, and really lucky that 2 of the 3 years, especially the first 2 years, we had a really good team around me. And And what's more normal these days, and even back then, is there's a whole other junior tour happening while the men's tour is going on. And a lot of people, pretty much the majority, they've quit school and they're traveling full time on this junior tour. So to be able to play churchy tennis and have a really good team and a good coach there, I was getting half my hits at school there, and it kind of just kept me ticking along. I'd fill that in with 1 or 2 QAS sessions, and that would kind of just keep me ticking along to keep my eye in enough that when I finished school, I'd set up a half decent base or platform to kind of chase the tennis dream. So I was super lucky to end up at Churchy because they really did help me out, and they were super accommodating with just being pretty open-minded with the fact that I wanted to kind of pursue a life in professional sports, because it's not easy. And as a 15, 16-year-old kid, what you're thinking, and probably like the tournaments in Fiji and stuff, you look back now and you go, well, in the scheme of things, that's pretty insignificant, and I don't really have to go to those types of tournaments. But back when you're 15, 16, that and you're seeing your peers go off and playing junior slam tournaments and that, you think it's the be all and end all. So I was really lucky to be welcomed into an environment that, whilst was good for me to keep going to school, because I think that's actually really important, because you learn a lot more than just math and science and whatnot. You learn a lot of social skills, and you actually do get some good mates that will support you for the duration of my career. But at the same time, I could still kind of be able to play a little bit of sport and tennis, and had a good time there doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. You did mention grammar earlier on. We heard it wasn't all smooth sailing at school. They apparently didn't pick you in the first for tennis in year 8, even though you beat the number 1 player there.
What is going on there? What is this story?
I don't know where we're getting this information, mate.
Has done some serious
Yeah, that's
homework.
usually half the fun, is by the end of the interview, you've worked out who the informant is, generally.
Yeah, I know. Jeez, I'm racking my brains, because there could be a couple of people here. Apparently I couldn't play doubles. I don't know though. I didn't get coached there. That was probably the problem.
Yeah, okay.
Very harsh.
I think that's what it came down to. But look, again, back then when you're 13, 14 or whatever, you think that's the be all and end all. You really do believe that an injustice is happening, or this is going to make or break me. But in the scheme of things, and that's what I try to actually tell some of these young ones that I speak to, and every now and again hit with back here, that in the scheme of things, this is just enjoy it. Right now, there's actually no stress. You feel like there's all the stresses of the world on your shoulders, but you're 14, 15, and there's so many other things that are going to happen in your tennis career down the track. So, I was grateful that I got to go to Churchy. Grammar it just wasn't the school for me. It's the school for a lot of people, but for me, back then, Churchy was it, and I'm really lucky that my parents, saw that and made that move possible.
Yeah, absolutely. John, one thing that always fascinates me about watching you play, because you're certainly not alone in this in terms of like across a gamut of sports, you see this quite often, but your sort of head tapping and hand signals and those things that you do during your games, do they stem from those early days of you playing tennis, or is that like a superstitious thing, or just something that's become part of your routine now?
Yeah, look, it's we all have our different tics, don't we? And I'm a physical player on court, that's what I try to bring onto the court, but also I try to be mentally switched on the whole time. I see that as something that can be a difference in my game. Yeah. And those are just kind of visual little ticks that I love using the energy of my bench too. And those are kind of just visual ticks that kind of get the juices flowing. But definitely, look, there are probably a few little superstitions there, and there are, your anxiety levels are probably at an all-time high in tennis, because it's an individual sport, and you're playing for yourself out there, and there's a lot of different pressures that you're facing. And there's no doubt that there's little ticks, and when you're a little bit nervous, you kind of fall back into these little kind of routines that you're doing, and so you see some players that are like that. I looked up to Leighton a lot when I played, when I grew up. Leighton and Paddy Rafter, they were the two Australians. Obviously, being a Queenslander, Paddy Rafter for me was just the absolute, bee's knees. And then Leighton kind of took that mantle, and just the way he played, I think everyone could appreciate just how much of a fighter he was out there. He left it absolutely left everything out there, and he's still like that today, mate. Like when we go into Davis Cup camp, he's an absolute machine still, and if we had to have a competition to blow a piece of paper across the table, he'd want to win it. It's just in him. But you even saw Leighton, you saw those little ticks that he would do up at the service line. He'd be readjusting himself. We see Rafa do it the whole time too, don't we? And obviously we see him so much on the TV because he's won so much. He's constantly readjusting and fiddling. It's just these little nervous, ticks and that happen. So yeah, look, I'm definitely not perfect out there, but it's just kind of part of it. I haven't had to tap the head for a while, which is probably a nice little relief being off the court. But yeah, for the head especially, yeah. But look, I'm looking forward to when I can get back out there, and even when those ticks come back, I'm looking forward to bringing that back out on the court, because what you do is when you're away, you miss that competitiveness. You miss when you grow up your whole life playing competitive sport, and it's kind of taken away from you. You really do miss it. So, hopefully I can be on a court soon, tapping the head and going through the routine.
Absolutely, yeah. It actually quite amps me up, like looking at tennis players. It's always the thing that I've loved about tennis is watching when they win like big points, like break points and stuff, and just the energy that comes from that box. I must admit, I've played a few social games and found myself pointing to a make-believe box, just trying to really amp myself up for the competition. So I always find that remarkable.
Yeah, look, mate, when you're on the court, and it's something that's actually really tough in the early stages of your career, because most of the time, early on, especially if you didn't have a whole lot of help, let's say from the federation when you were starting out and that, it's pretty much you out there, and you don't know anyone. You even don't really know a lot of the tennis players early on. You don't know anyone on those, when you're 900 in the world and you're battling away. You're playing for $100 and no one's watching you whatsoever. So you're in your head a lot to begin with. And for someone who likes to play with, that energy and bring that kind of physicality and that energetic nature onto the court, you appreciate it so much more actually when you start playing in front of crowds. And even if my coach isn't there or because you can't afford a coach every week, you'll find someone in the crowd that's giving you that energy, or even at the Australian Open, for example, up one end is your coaching box, but if you're up the far end, you're looking for someone in that crowd that you're giving those fist pumps to, and you're really feeding off their energy. It's something that I love, and tennis, like every sport, we're in an entertainment industry, and I think if you can take a few people along for the ride, they enjoy it all the more.
Absolutely. I can see what you're angling towards, John, and I'm more than happy to be that person at the opposite end of the coach's box that pumps you up in the Australian Open.
I won't be able to afford you, mate.
No, very fair.
All right. sorry to interrupt everyone there. I'm sure you're enjoying listening to John's voice and his very detailed answers, but I thought this would be a good chance to have a little bit of a break, a bit of an intermission. So we'll end part A of the interview here and hopefully have part B ready for you by tomorrow, I would think, or in the coming days.
Absolutely, we most certainly will. Just a reminder, guys, that if you are listening on Spotify or Apple, then we would really appreciate you getting around us in terms of subscribing so you know when that new episode is out, and that'll definitely give you in the box seat for tomorrow when that new episode is released. And then also any sort of rating on those particular platforms would be much appreciated as well. Please do continue to keep in touch with us. If there's any story that you have or any idea for the podcast that you want us to try and cover, then we love hearing from people. So we would most certainly encourage you to get around us, and they can do that via where, would you say?
They get around us on Facebook or Instagram, or we've got TikTok now, which I'm not a fan of watching TikTok videos.
Yeah, Lee's savage dance.
Been practicing and showing us. I haven't been watching too much, so
I've been avoiding it like the plague.
Yeah, just watch those hips, guys. Those hips don't lie.
Got some stuff on YouTube as well. Some videos of some of our podcasts to get around and watch those if you've got time.
And if that confused you too much, just jump onto the website. We got thechocolates.com.au and you'll find everything you need to know there, I would think.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We got the chocks. We should turn that into a little jingle, actually, just telling us the podcast, the website. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, we could do that.
All right, we'll work on that then. Aside from that, guys, that's pretty much all we have for you for now. We'll be back with part B in the next 24 hours. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Bye.